Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here with another one of my top 10 lists, and I'm really delighted to be bringing you my top 10 favourite Clint Eastwood movies. For me, an absolute icon in the world of movies, my favourite actor of all time, grew up on his movies, and he's still going strong today, directing movies now. But he is an absolute icon, is Clint Eastwood. The hardest thing for me was actually doing a top 10 list because I just love so many of his movies. But as before, this is subjective. This is my choices for top 10 of his favourite movies. I'm sure your list will look differently than mine, but there are some really iconic movies in this list. So as usual, we'll start with a couple that just didn't crack my top 10 but I think are certainly worth a mention. So let's get on with the list. Okay, just didn't crack my top 10, and that's The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. 1967 it was released, probably the best of the dollar movies, the trilogy of dollar movies that he made. It's a fantastic movie, this. It just didn't crack my top 10, unfortunately, guys, but definitely worth watching if you've never seen it. It's brilliant. And Kelly's Heroes, released in 1970, and I've got such an affection for this movie. Kind of, when you analyse it, a bit of an Expendables of its time, because it starred some top actors in its time: Clint Eastwood, Telly Savalas, Donald Sutherland and others. And it's a really, really fantastic movie, guys. A great adventure war movie if you've never seen it, so have a look. So coming in at number 10 on my list is The Gauntlet. Clint Eastwood, Sandra Locke. Now Sandra Locke made a lot of movies with Clint Eastwood in the 70s and 80s. They were partners. Didn't end well, unfortunately. But they certainly made a lot of movies together, and this movie was a great action movie for its time, and it focused on an alcoholic, burnt out cop played by Clint Eastwood that has to transport a witness played by Sandra Locke, who is a prostitute, across country to a trial, to give her testimony at a trial. Unfortunately, there are quite a few people that have got other ideas, and he has to keep her and himself alive on the trip. It's a really great action movie where he plays a very vulnerable action hero, but it is a really fun movie to watch, guys, and I remember watching this so many times when I was a kid. It's fantastic. Coming in at number 9, one of his classic westerns, High Plains Drifter, released in 1973 and directed by Clint Eastwood, as he directed many of his own movies. And this is a really iconic western, guys, where he kind of plays the bad guy in this movie, and you're not sure if it's kind of a supernatural tale. There's a sheriff murdered in this western town, and then out of the blue turns up Clint Eastwood, and you're not sure if he's the reincarnation of this cowboy, or if he's a relative. But he basically makes the town's life a living hell. But his job basically is to get his own back on the outlaws that either killed and punished him or the previous sheriff in the town. It's a really fantastic western, this, really brutal at times, but also quite fun too, and definitely one of his most iconic westerns. At number 8, $1 Million Baby. Now this is further up the list, mainly because this is Hilary Swank's movie in regards to acting. She's outstanding in this movie. But this movie absolutely blew me away when I saw it. I was totally aghast. I thought it was incredible. Such an amazing movie, and I think this is arguably Clint Eastwood's best performance in front of a camera. I think that's a strong statement because he has had a lot of very good performances, but I just loved this movie. I didn't see it when it first came out. The first time I saw this movie was on a plane to Sri Lanka. It was showing, and I watched it, and I remember crying like a baby on the plane. I was. And it absolutely blew the box office away. Another film directed by Clint Eastwood. The man's a genius behind the camera and in front of the camera. So definitely, guys, $1 Million Baby is a truly iconic Clint Eastwood movie. Definitely worth seeing. Number 7, Gran Torino. Wow, to say this was supposed to be his final appearance on screen. Look at the box office for this one, guys. And it was directed by Clint again. Huge hit where he plays basically a miserable old sod that doesn't like anybody on his lawn. He's incredibly racist and very, very grumpy. But he has such a fantastic character arc in this movie. It's a wonderful performance by Clint Eastwood. He taps into his old Dirty Harry performances here as well, and to be able to turn on such an iconic hardman image for a movie like this at his age was just wonderful, and I really, really enjoyed this movie. He was able to show his tough side and his tender side in this movie, and what was definitely one of my favourite performances and movies by Clint Eastwood. Really fantastic movie. Number 6, In the Line of Fire. One of the rare movies not directed by Clint Eastwood. This was Wolfgang Petersen, I believe. Released in 1993. And I think definitely one of his strongest movies. It's a really fun action movie. John Malkovich plays the bad guy in the movie and he steals every scene he's in. Rene Russo plays the love interest in the movie. And Clint Eastwood basically plays an aging Secret Service agent who is haunted by his past, and he has one last chance to redeem himself from the hitman who is John Malkovich, who has threatened to assassinate the president. And it's Clint Eastwood's job to track down John Malkovich but also keep the president alive. It's a really brilliant movie, this, guys, and quite a different performance by Clint Eastwood. If you've never seen it, you watch it and you'll see what I mean when you watch it. Great movie. Number 5, Unforgiven. Again, arguably one of his greatest movies. The movie that really put him on the map in regards to a director. It won the Best Picture in 1992 at the Oscars. Incredibly iconic cast. Clint Eastwood, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, Richard Harris. And incredible. Where he plays an aging gunslinger who, again, is struggling to come to terms with who he was, and he needs to go on one last job. Now, when I first saw this movie, I wasn't overly impressed. I think it's probably because I grew up on a different kind of Clint Eastwood in Western movies, and he gave us something really special with this movie, and it's a movie I've learnt to love and appreciate as I have matured as a person. Really incredible Western, and another fantastic movie by Clint Eastwood. Number 4, I absolutely love this movie, Heartbreak Ridge. Now, this is always the movie I would say to somebody who's not a fan of Clint Eastwood or hasn't seen many Clint Eastwood movies. I would always say start with Heartbreak Ridge. It's an amazing movie. It's definitely one of my favourites. I watched this constantly in the 80s and 90s. He plays an aging gunnery sergeant, Thomas Highway, who is brought back. He's very close to retirement, but he's brought in to train up some Marines who are lagging behind. And boy, does he train these Marines. He's absolutely ruthless with them, but they'll learn to love and respect him. And the end of the movie, where they have to go like on a little bit of a mini war, is great as well. It gives you some great action by the end. Thoroughly enjoyable movie. Definitely one of his strongest movies. You must watch Heartbreak Ridge. Number 3, I think this is personally my favourite Clint Eastwood Western, The Outlaw, Josey Wales. He plays a completely badass cowboy in this movie. It's directed by Clint Eastwood. It was released in 1976. And he plays an incredible, like I say, such a badass cowboy in this movie who's lost everything. He loses his family right at the beginning in the movie, and he's on a mission for revenge throughout this whole movie. And he's like a one-man army in this movie. I have such fond memories of watching this with my dad when I was young, and he's so badass in this movie. Every other scene, I remember my dad giggling at it because it's such fun to watch this movie. There are some difficult scenes in this movie, believe it or not. It's very, very adult, but it's such a fantastic cowboy movie, and I think it's his best one. So definitely watch this movie, guys. Number 2, Every Which Way But Loose. Released in 1978, was a box office smash at the time, and it produced a sequel, Any Which Way You Can, I think, which was released in 1980, I think, or 81. And this is an action comedy, basically. If you've never seen Every Which Way But Loose, you certainly have to see it. I did a classic movie review on it, so if you want to check that out on my channel, you'll find it in my classic movie review section. Great movie. It was kind of got fairly terrible reviews when it was released. It was a bit, looked down on by a lot of critics, but the audience has absolutely, it's one of those movies where the audience has absolutely loved it, and it's one of those iconic classic 70s movies, and definitely for me one of Clint Eastwood's best. Mainly for nostalgia for me. I used to watch this all the time when I was young. It's such a fun movie, guys. And number 1, it has to be Dirty Harry. His most iconic role that spawned so many sequels. All of the sequels are watchable, but none of them are anywhere as good as the first one. He created such an iconic character that people have been trying to emulate ever since. The movie itself is completely engaging. It's a movie I still watch at least once a year. It's still watchable. It still stands up. Where basically Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, is on the trail of the Scorpio killer. That was based actually on the serial killer at the time, the Zodiac killer. So for me, this just has to be number 1 on the list. It's truly an iconic Clint Eastwood performance, and for me one of the best movies in the 70s. So that's it, guys. That's my list of Clint Eastwood movies. I hope you enjoyed it.